So, Logan Paul's ex-co-host George Janko left the podcast apparently for some sour reasons, and I'm not kept up on all of that nonsense. So I know that George is a Christian, I believe, and Logan Paul fought back against him on it, and he didn't like that. I didn't like that either. So let's see what this whole thing is about.
I wanted to ask you, to the best of your ability, what can you speak about George? Like, why is he off the show?
I don't. So here's the thing. I'm really not. They very much made it clear that I'm not allowed to speak up about.
Oh, so it's a legal thing. That's always good. That's always a fun thing. Shows respect and that they're good people.
Things. So I can't even
legally.
Yeah. So before the Nug Boys released the now infamous Andrew Schultz podcast episode, in which Steiny got completely destroyed, Bobby Lee making fun of George Janko, roasting him until he eventually walked out of the show, was the biggest thing in podcasting for a while.
There are certain. He is clocked out.
Yeah,
I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse.
No,
No, stop.
Yeah,
George,
and
I
he
want
just
you over
leaves.
here.
Yeah,
George, I want you
I
over
remember
here.
that.
Chase him down. Go. Back then when this happened, it caused a lot of backlash for George, which a lot of big...
Wasn't it just over a joke? But still, I like George. That was a slip though. He was probably super stressed out already.
Big channels covered, getting massive views, and for the most part, most people, including Logan Paul, were not the nicest to him.
And I'm just doing this for a couple weeks so then I could leave and click.
Hey, it's
That's
Jeff.
why I left impulsive.
That's good. It's a good strategy.
crush.
It's been done. It's been done many times, and it works. I love this outlet, and it exists because people watch. And without people watching, I just have a show like.
For example, Sonny V2, a large YouTube channel, covered it with a very interesting narrative that got over 3 million views in only 1 month.
Episode 351 of the Impulsive Podcast. Bobby Lee made one single joke which completely wrecked the relationship between the three hosts, Logan,
I think I saw
Mike,
this
and most
video.
notably George.
Now, to be fair,
Or actually, I think I probably watched somebody react to it. Most likely.
if you're only looking at his performance or analyzing the way he acted on the podcast, then most of the criticism, I think, it's correct. But to say that one joke ended his relationship with Logan Paul, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. And luckily for us, about 2 weeks ago, George Janko was actually on Howie Mandel's podcast, and he revealed some very interesting and new information about why he left the Impulsive show. And also, he told the truth about the now infamous Bobby Lee episode. And also Mike, who is one of the Impulsive co-hosts and close friend of Logan Paul, had a very interesting answer when he was asked about George. So now that we have multiple perspectives, let's get started.
So you were on probably one of the most visibly successful podcasts, just digital media that exists, with Logan, who was not only a co-host and co-worker, but also a really good friend. And you broke up.
Yeah.
You guys broke up. And I think in this world, it was big news. And I think you've talked about it before. And you said that you started your podcast knowing or feeling that you were on your way out?
Yeah, I think I tiptoe around this conversation just because I tend not to, because it's my point of view, right? So I don't want to go out there and just bash Logan or Mike. Because at the end of the day, regardless, I do separate myself from them now. Regardless, God provided me these friends that I had to put me on the platform that I have now.
Was it more of a friendship thing or a business thing that,
I
because
think-
you guys were friends before anything else?
Yes.
So that must have
Yeah, that really sucks, man. They weren't really as friends though.
been hard. Was it that aspect of it that started to fall apart?
Yeah, it's hard to be friends with people who have their own like empires going on, because then you're just a part of their empire.
Honestly, I think it just comes down to respect.
Was it the religion?
Yeah.
It's just their point of views. It got messy, and it just started feeling like I wasn't around people that truly cared for my best interest. And
Yep.
I truly just had to respectfully walk away.
And this is very interesting because there's essentially two different narratives that are being pushed. Because on Logan's side, you could argue that George was only using it for clouds and attention, and once he got enough of it, he found a way to make some drama, get attention, and then use that to help launch his own project. Then later on, he saw that it was actually working, and he decided to leave the Impulsive podcast. Or maybe George Janko did see Logan Paul as a close friend and as somebody that maybe he could help out in the future, but instead he saw Logan Paul getting into more and more trouble, more controversies with, the unethical business practices and whatever, and maybe he changed in his personal life too. So then at that point, George decided to look out for his own, for his best interest. And the thing is that both of those seem very possible just based on how they have acted in the past.
So what is the biggest, on a serious note, what is the biggest misconception of you and what happened there that bothered you? And it's not true. And maybe they got that misconception because of the way you were editorialized or...
He likes to tend to argue with me. And so I said, okay, then how about we discuss this?
Yeah. Yeah, when you're arguing all the time, I've got friends that I've had to distance myself from because they just constantly want to argue with me, want to show them something cool, and then they tell me how I would never reach that status, or these people are dumb for doing these crazy things.
What you guys done? Let's talk about this. And he goes,
or your point of views make no sense,
yeah, do it. And then I go, okay. And so I tweeted out, I wasn't going to talk out of respect for the man.
So,
and then his attorneys hit me up and said, hey, let me remind you about the stuff you've signed. And I said, okay.
So what is the misconception that came out to that wide audience that is
Friends don't get attorneys involved.
not true that you want to clear up right now to my audience?
That Bobby Lee episode was edited, and they made me look like I wasn't a comedian that can't take a joke, even though every episode they make jokes on. And the reason I walked away was definitely not put in there.
And that's it. Now I could leave that in.
I guess so, yeah. They moved around very disrespectfully.
Ooh,
Did it make
that's
for a better
rough.
show the way it was cut?
That made me miserable, dude. That put me through a f***ing terrible time. That was probably the worst moments of my life.
So as a friend, not as a business, but as a friend, it was up. As a business.
No, they did it to. See, it's basically, this is what it is, man. And I'll say this confidently: the truth always comes out.
Now, when it comes to these type of situations, it's a little bit tricky because obviously I want to be on George's side, because it's not that hard to believe that Logan Paul would be a hard person to work for, and at the end of the day, he is the boss. But there were a few things that George said that didn't make a lot of sense. For example, him saying that Logan Paul went out of his way or basically edited the videos or the podcast in a way that it would make George look the worst seems a little bit like victim mentality, because at least when it comes to the Bobby Lee episode, we can all agree that he had a poor performance. I mean, compared to how Steiny acted with Andrew Schultz, it's not that bad. And also, Logan Paul wasn't helping him out at all. If anything, it was actually Logan Paul that made George walk out of the show. I mean, at this point, it's very clear that Logan Paul does not care what he shares on camera and what kind of things he puts on YouTube. I mean, even more recently, he got into an argument with his own brother, Jake Paul, after he essentially told him that Logan Paul was a hard person to work with.
And relationship.
Yeah, I imagine that he is an extremely difficult person to work with, let alone live with.
Bro, like, people don't like to work with your team. People hate your team.
I could say the same thing.
They hate your team.
Okay, let's
You
chill
could
out.
you
Let's-
could
there's-
but you
let's
you
chill out.
could say that you could say the same thing, but the evidence doesn't show that. So it's like,
Let's chill out. You have a fight coming up. Let's talk about it again after that fight. We're going in circles here, and it's getting personal.
Now, that alone is a subject for another video, but at least when it comes to not being able to
It's not personal if your employees hate you and your company's falling apart and you have to tell everybody lies to save your ass.
talk because you sign a document like an NDA or something. I mean, that's usually how the business is, especially working for people like Logan Paul, who now really cares about the PR and all that stuff. Obviously, as long as he didn't do anything illegal or force him to do something highly unethical, then it's all business at the end of the day. I mean, is Logan Paul a bad friend? Maybe. Think about it. If he was arguing that bad,
and I would argue that he is a bad person.
With his own brother, Jake Paul, who potentially could put up with him in a fight or even beat him, I can imagine how he treated George Janko behind the cameras when an argument would arise. But then the question is, why wait so long? Because unless he had some type of contract that forced him to do a certain amount of episodes, why wait? Because George himself said that things were pretty bad even way before the Bobby Lee episode, but he kept showing up and being professional and working.
So what was the first inkling? Because when I was on the show, you guys seemed like glued at the hip, like you were inseparable. This is what you were going to do.
Yeah. I think we're just professionals. We keep it professional, and then
Can't be around your friends all the time.
sometimes that professional stuff slips when emotions start arising.
I don't know what you mean.
I think we kept it It's like rock band. Like they used to.
Like during the show.
It wasn't as solid when I was around?
No.
So once again, if he was actually forced to finish a certain amount of episodes, almost like a UFC fighter, then he was definitely professional, and props to him. But if there was nothing keeping him there contractually, then it's kind of hard to feel bad for him. I understand leaving a show with close friends, a massive show with close friends, is a hard decision. But I mean, that's the hard part of business. By the way, if you like what...
And also, it's like you're in the routine of doing it, and all of the things that are tied to that, they stop, and you have to start your own thing. You're already doing a thing, you know. It's just difficult to get out of patterns, even when it's like tearing you apart.
What you're seeing so far, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much, and we're close to hitting 100,000 subscribers, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Make that decision?
I'm nowhere near 100,000. I'm like 13 right now. Barely scraping over 1,000 views on my channel.
Or to have that decision made for you? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second.
I made that decision.
100%.
I guarantee I could show you that they've welcomed me back, and I said no.
Okay. So to make that decision would be a really tough decision for most people.
It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. My sister left her job. Reed, it works for me. My girlfriend, I have a whole team. I provide for the team because they're providing my dreams by working with me. And when it got to a point where he made me
Yeah, I bet he was taking a loss too.
choose the well-being between my team and them, I had to sacrifice my life. And I prayed that God would lift me so that way I don't drop them. And I could tell you confidently within the 6 months that I've been on my own, it would take me 10 years to do that on Impulsive. God will show in front of everyone who I am and who the people that tried to stop me.
But the truth is, they didn't stop you. You have...
They tried to.
You have a... What do you mean they tried to stop you?
I mean, bro, they even tried to interfere with my own show, started making decisions for my own show. And I was like, that's where I started going, hey, guys, I've juggled enough for you guys and been disrespected on this show. Now you're trying to come over here and try to tell me how to run my own house. I was like, no, you guys.
Do you think you can ever be friends again without doing the show?
If they change their hearts, I'm not proud to call them friends.
Yep, feel that.
By the way, that's the most I don't think I've ever talked about it like so.
Now, if Logan Paul did try to stop George from doing his own podcast, then it's completely understandable to choose your own thing and bet on yourself. But even though Logan is highly competitive and all that stuff, even with his own brother, I don't see why he would try to stop him unless it's some like deep personal stuff, because Mike has his own very successful vlog, and even George's replacement, Jeff, he has his own YouTube channel, his own podcast, and if anything, it's more of a direct competition to Impulsive than George's new show. And I'm sure there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we'll probably never get a chance to know about. Now, my guess is that Logan Paul is slowly...
Yeah, and Logan Paul's had all these interesting guests on, and it makes me think, like, what does he cut up to manipulate it to make it look better? And a lot of these celebrities are just like, do it and forget it, and they don't care what you do with the footage afterward. So, like, I'm probably never gonna watch that show again. I watched it just because of some of the interesting guests.
Changing. He wants to get rid of his current friends to make room for his new or his future wife. There's a chance that George saw it coming and he just wanted to secure something for himself, which is extremely hard to do, and he's actually pulling it off.
I wanted to ask you, to the best of your ability, what can you speak about George? Like, why is he off the show?
So here's the thing. Obviously, like, everybody has been kind of tight-lipped about it, right?
Yeah.
About the situation, and there's, various factors as to why that's the case. The situation has been particularly tough for me because I really am a third party in the situation. I am a founder, yes, but at the end of the day, really a co-host on the show. But at the end of the day,
No, dude.
it's not my name.
No, it may not be his name that's in it, but he's in it. He's supposed to be a friend, and he's being a businessman. And that's not cool.
Name on the wall. It's not my show.
If it was your choice, would you have kept George on the show, based on what you just said?
There's no way for me to answer that without it
Continue.
causing a massive problem. I can say this with my chest out. I was always good to George. If you watch back any episode of that show, and I still
I could kind of believe that. I feel like Logan probably is the one who's the shit starter and the causing all the problems.
respect and love George very much. He's an incredible person. It's just a really tough topic. And honestly, like we purposely haven't said a lot about it. Yeah. I think there's just like a lot of feeling and a lot of love and a lot of just kind of upsetness across the board on how things played out.
It was very clear that Mike was struggling to answer the question and was trying to dance around it as much as possible, which, to be fair, that's the only thing he can do since he's put between two friends. And from the sound of it, it wasn't his decision because he made it clear that even though he was one of the founders of the Impulsive podcast, that it wasn't his show and it wasn't his call. Obviously, Mike is never going to talk bad about Logan Paul again. And the thing is, he could be next because although Mike has a very successful vlog channel, a YouTube channel, Logan Paul didn't cut him in on the whole Prime business, even though he has been heavily promoting it.
Thank you. Do you still own nothing of that?
Nothing. 0%.
Damn, dude, that sucks.
Loyal servant, bro. You know
that's crazy.
In that respect, at least.
But you get, I mean, there's other benefits.
No, he already told me he's gonna break me off.
Because that's.
He already told me he's breaking me off, bro.
Because that's
I'm
big
breaking
one.
him off.
Yeah, because that's that shit.
Oh yeah, no, he's gonna. Yeah, I'll be taken care of. I'm not worried about it.
Good. You should, because you know, it's funny. Your
Bro,
ads are.
Bro, I have it 24/7.
Your ads are hilarious.
I
like
probably
not
promote it more
sponsored.
than they do on YouTube, bro.
So at the end of the day, if Logan did that to Mike, who supposedly helped him out a lot and is almost like a father figure, I can see him completely not care about George. So because of that, I don't think this is a situation where
I've had water that's better than Prime, and I don't like water.
George Janko just wants to talk about Logan Paul for attention. I do think that he was actually opening up. And to be honest, I did like that version of George a lot better than before, where he was just trying to be funny and trying to be on all the time. This time he was a lot more calm and more grounded, I believe. And in regards to Logan Paul, I don't think that man has changed that much. Even recently, they shared a story about how Mike and Logan almost got into a physical fight over something simple that Mike said to his then girlfriend. And then he got into a huge argument with his own brother about business and marketing, and it was kind of silly. But yeah, it looks like things are getting pretty bad over there. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe to support the channel. It helps out so much. Follow me on IG if you would like to connect. Dislike if you didn't like the video. But that is all we have for today.
Yeah, what he said. Logan Paul's trash. Jake Paul's trash too. Technically a little bit less trash than Logan Paul, but Jake Paul has a bigger audience of children. But I don't know, Logan Paul has an audience of like teenagers. I don't know if that's worse, because teenagers halfway know what they're doing. Kids absolutely don't know what they're doing, so teenagers cause more problems and be more dangerous, and parents are too dumb to raise kids with all of this technology.